Amid the noise of a city that never slows, a single act of compassion, a soccer icon's smile for an elderly woman, became the heartbeat of a community reborn. In the heart of a gritty American city where concrete pulsed with the rhythm of hurried footsteps and car horns, a forgotten street corner cradled a quiet story. The morning sun spilled weakly over cracked sidewalks, barely warming the air. People rushed by, briefcases swinging, earbuds in, eyes glued to screens, oblivious to the world beyond their own. Amid this chaos, a small figure sat, almost invisible, on a tattered blanket spread across the cold pavement. Margaret, an elderly woman with silver hair peeking from a faded blue scarf, clutched a small box of gum. Her hands, gnarled like old tree roots, trembled slightly as she arranged the colorful packets. Her face, etched with lines of a life hard-lived, held a faint glimmer of hope, though her eyes betrayed a weariness that weighed heavier than the years. Each gum packet was a plea, a whisper of survival, but the crowd flowed past her, indifferent. Some glanced away, others pretended not to see, their footsteps a steady drumbeat of neglect. Margaret's voice, soft and cracked, barely rose above the city's hum. "Gum? Just $1," she murmured, her words dissolving into the morning air. She adjusted her scarf, pulling it tighter against the breeze, and sighed. A sound so faint, it seemed to carry the weight of a lifetime. Hey, if this story moves you, smash the like button, comment hope below, and subscribe to catch the shocking moment waiting at the video's close. Across the street, a man moved through the crowd, his steps deliberate, his presence understated. He wore a plain black hoodie, a baseball cap pulled low, and sunglasses that shielded his eyes. But there was something about him, a quiet magnetism, a spark that drew glances despite his effort to blend in. This was Ronaldo, a soccer legend whose name echoed in stadiums worldwide. But here, he was just a man walking a city street, far from the spotlight. His fame, his trophies, his wealth, they meant nothing in this moment. What caught his eye was Margaret, her small frame hunched against the world's indifference. He stopped, his gaze lingering. Her solitude pierced him, a sharp pang in his chest. He'd known struggle once, back in his childhood, when dreams of soccer were all he had to cling to. Something about Margaret's quiet fight stirred those memories, pulling him closer. Ronaldo crossed the street, weaving through the stream of pedestrians. His sneakers scuffed the pavement, each step heavy with purpose. The city's noise faded as he approached, the world narrowing to the woman on the blanket. Margaret didn't notice him at first, her eyes fixed on a young couple who hurried past without a glance. Ronaldo crouched down, leveling his gaze with hers. His sunglasses slid to the tip of his nose, revealing eyes warm with kindness. "Good morning, ma'am," he said, his voice low, steady, like a hand extended in friendship. Margaret blinked, startled. Her lips parted, but no words came. Someone had seen her. Someone had stopped. For a moment, they just looked at each other. Ronaldo's smile, small but genuine, softened the lines on Margaret's face. Her eyes, cloudy with age, flickered with surprise, then gratitude. "Gum?" she asked, her voice trembling, as if testing whether this moment was real. Ronaldo nodded, reaching for the box. "I'll take a few," he said, picking up a handful of packets, mint, cinnamon, bubblegum. The colors flashed in the sunlight, bright against the gray of the street. He handed her a crumpled $10 bill, but his eyes never left hers. "Keep the change," he added softly. Margaret's hands shook as she took the money, her fingers brushing his. They were cold, fragile, but her grip was firm, as if holding onto this small act of kindness for dear life. Ronaldo stayed there, crouched on the sidewalk, ignoring the curious stares of passers-by. He asked her name. "Margaret," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. He repeated it, letting it settle in his mind like a promise. "Margaret, how's your morning going?" he asked, his tone gentle, inviting her to share. She hesitated, unused to being heard. Then, slowly, her story spilled out. She was a widow, she said, her husband gone decades ago. She'd raised 3 kids alone, stitching clothes late into the night to keep food on the table. Her fingers, once nimble with a needle, now ached with arthritis. Her children had grown, moved away, lost touch. The world had moved on, leaving her here, selling gum to scrape by. Each word carried the weight of years: joy, loss, resilience. Ronaldo listened, his heart tightening. He saw his own mother in Margaret's story, the sacrifices, the quiet strength. Nearby, a barista named Jake leaned against the counter of a small coffee shop, watching the scene unfold. His apron was stained, his eyes tired from the morning rush, but something about the man kneeling on the sidewalk held his attention. Jake nudged his co-worker, whispering, "Is that Ronaldo?" The co-worker shrugged, skeptical, but Jake kept watching, drawn to the tenderness of the moment. A teenage girl, Mia, rolled by on her skateboard, her backpack slung low. She stopped, flipping her board up with a practiced flick, her eyes narrowing as she recognized Ronaldo. She'd seen his face on posters, on TV, but here he was, just a guy talking to an old lady. Mia lingered, curious, her usual cynicism softened by the sight. Ronaldo didn't notice the growing attention. He was focused on Margaret, her voice growing stronger as she spoke. She told him about her favorite memories, baking bread for her kids, dancing to old jazz records in her tiny apartment. Ronaldo laughed, picturing her swaying to the music, and shared a story of his own, kicking a battered soccer ball through dusty streets as a kid, dreaming of something bigger. Margaret's eyes lit up, a spark of youth returning. For the first time that day she smiled, a small, fragile thing that warmed the air between them. Ronaldo reached into his pocket, pulling out another bill. "Let's get you something warm," he said, standing and offering his hand. They walked to Jake's coffee shop, Margaret's steps slow but steady, her arm looped through Ronaldo's like he was family. Jake, still stunned, fumbled the order but managed to pour 2 steaming cups of coffee. "On the house," he mumbled, his voice thick with emotion. Ronaldo thanked him, slipping a tip into the jar. He and Margaret sat at a small table by the window, the city's chaos muted behind the glass. Mia, still outside, watched through the window, her skateboard tucked under her arm. She snapped a photo, not for clout, but because something about this moment felt important, like a secret the world needed to know. As they sipped their coffee, Margaret's hands warmed around the cup, her fingers less shaky now. Ronaldo asked more questions, about her hometown, her dreams, the little things that made her laugh. She told him about her love for knitting, how she used to make scarves for her kids each winter. "I don't have the yarn anymore," she said, her voice trailing off. Ronaldo's jaw tightened, not with pity, but with resolve. He saw the strength in her, the fire that hadn't gone out despite everything. "You're a fighter, Margaret," he said, his voice firm. "Don't ever forget that." She looked at him, tears welling, but she nodded, as if his words had stitched something broken back together. The coffee shop grew quieter, the morning rush slowing. Jake kept stealing glances, his hands idle on the counter. Mia, now sitting on the curb, scrolled through her phone, debating whether to post the photo. The street outside buzzed, but inside, it was just Ronaldo and Margaret, 2 souls connected by a simple act of seeing. Ronaldo paid for more gum, enough to empty her box, and slipped another bill into her hand. "This isn't charity," he said, his eyes steady. "It's because you're worth it." Margaret's tears spilled over, and she clutched his hand, her grip surprisingly strong. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice breaking. Ronaldo smiled, brushing a tear from her cheek with the gentleness of a son. As they stepped back onto the street, the crowd seemed to pause. A few passers-by stopped, sensing something extraordinary. Jake followed them out, wiping his hands on his apron, his heart racing. Mia stood, her skateboard clattering to the ground. Ronaldo turned to Margaret, his voice low but clear. "I'm coming back tomorrow, okay? You're not alone." Margaret nodded, her scarf slipping slightly, revealing more of her silver hair. She looked younger somehow, as if his promise had lifted years from her shoulders. Ronaldo gave her one last smile, then pulled his cap lower and walked away, the city swallowing him back into its rhythm. Jake and Mia exchanged a look, both feeling the weight of what they'd witnessed. Jake wondered if he'd ever have the courage to do something like that. Mia, usually quick with a sarcastic quip, was silent, her phone still in her hand, the photo unposted. Margaret sat back on her blanket, her box of gum empty, but her heart full. She tucked the money into her pocket, her fingers lingering on the bills, but it was Ronaldo's words that warmed her more than the coffee. For the first time in years, she felt seen, not as a shadow on the sidewalk, but as a person with a story worth hearing. The street returned to its usual pace, but something had shifted. Jake went back to his counter, vowing to pay more attention to the people around him. Mia hopped on her skateboard, her mind racing with ideas about how to help, and Margaret, still clutching her empty box, looked out at the city with new eyes. Ronaldo's promise echoed in her mind, a lifeline she hadn't expected. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for now, she felt a flicker of hope, bright as the gum packets she'd sold. Somewhere in the distance, Ronaldo walked on, his heart heavy but full, knowing he'd be back, knowing this was only the beginning. 2. The city woke to another grey morning, its pulse steady with honking cars and chattering crowds. The street corner where Margaret sat felt different now, as if Ronaldo's visit had left an invisible mark. Her tattered blanket was spread out again, but her box of gum was lighter, thanks to Ronaldo's kindness the day before. Her blue scarf was knotted tightly, her silver hair catching the faint sunlight. Margaret's hands, still gnarled, moved with a new rhythm, arranging her gum packets with care. Her eyes, though tired, held a spark, something fragile, like a candle fighting the wind. Passers-by still rushed past, their faces buried in phones or worries, but Margaret wasn't as invisible anymore. She murmured her usual offer. "Gum? Just $1." Her voice a little stronger, as if Ronaldo's words had stitched courage into her. Across the street, Ronaldo approached, his black hoodie and baseball cap blending him into the crowd. His steps were purposeful, his heart heavy with the memory of Margaret's story. He carried a small paper bag, its contents a secret he hoped would light her face again. He'd lain awake last night, thinking of his mother, her sacrifices, her quiet strength. Margaret's fight mirrored that, and he couldn't shake the need to do more. As he neared, he saw her hunched figure, the city's indifference swirling around her. His chest tightened. Fame and fortune felt hollow against her struggle. Ronaldo crouched beside Margaret, his smile warm, like sunlight breaking through clouds. "Morning, Margaret," he said, his voice soft but clear. She looked up, her eyes widening, then softening. "You came back," she whispered, her voice trembling with disbelief. Ronaldo nodded, setting the paper bag beside her. "Told you I would." He opened the bag, revealing a soft wool scarf, deep green like a forest, and a thermos of hot tea. "For you," he said, draping the scarf over her shoulders. Margaret's fingers brushed the wool, her eyes misting. "It's so warm," she said, her voice cracking. She clutched the thermos, its heat seeping into her hands, and for a moment she looked younger, as if kindness had peeled away years of hardship. Nearby, Jake, the barista, watched from his coffee shop's doorway, his apron slung over his shoulder. He'd been replaying yesterday's scene, Ronaldo's quiet compassion stirring something in him. He'd always kept his head down, serving coffee, chasing tips, but now he felt restless, like he'd missed something vital. Mia, the teenage skateboarder, leaned against a lamppost, her board propped beside her. She'd posted Ronaldo's photo last night, not for likes, but to capture the moment. It had spread quietly, a few locals commenting, "Is that really him?" Mia watched now, her usual smirk gone, replaced by curiosity. Ronaldo's return felt like proof that some things, some people, weren't just fleeting. Ronaldo sat cross-legged on the blanket, ignoring the gritty pavement. He asked Margaret about her night, her voice growing steadier as she spoke. She'd slept better, she said, the money from yesterday buying her a warm meal. But her words faltered when she mentioned her health, a cough that wouldn't quit, joints that ached in the cold. Ronaldo's jaw tightened, his mind racing. He pictured a shelter nearby, one he'd heard about, with warm beds and hot meals, but he didn't push, not yet. Instead, he shared a story from his childhood, kicking a ragged ball through dusty alleys, his mother cheering despite her exhaustion. Margaret smiled, her eyes distant, as if his words pulled her to her own memories. "I used to knit for my kids," she said, her voice soft. "Scarves, hats, anything to keep them warm." Ronaldo leaned closer, his eyes bright. "You should knit again, Margaret. You've got magic in those hands." The street's rhythm shifted subtly. A few passers-by slowed, glancing at the soccer star sitting on the sidewalk. Jake stepped closer, wiping his hands nervously. "Hey, Ronaldo?" he said, his voice shaky. Ronaldo looked up, his smile easy. "Jake, right?" Thanks for the coffee yesterday. Jake blushed, stunned that Ronaldo remembered his name. Mia edged nearer, her skateboard clattering as she dropped it. This is wild, she muttered, half to herself. Ronaldo waved her over, his grin inviting. Come sit, Mia. Margaret's got stories you need to hear. Mia hesitated, then plopped down. Her usual bravado softened. Margaret chuckled, a rusty sound, as if laughter had been locked away too long. But not everyone was charmed. Tom, a grizzled hot dog vendor parked nearby, watched with narrowed eyes. His cart steamed, its umbrella faded from years in the sun. Tom had seen do-gooders before, rich folks swooping in, making promises, then vanishing. He's just here for the cameras, Tom muttered to a customer, his voice gruff. Bet he's gone by tomorrow. His skepticism hung heavy, a shadow on the moment. Ronaldo didn't hear, but Mia did, her eyes flashing. She wanted to snap back, but Jake nudged her, shaking his head. They both felt it. Tom's doubt was a challenge, one they'd have to prove wrong. Ronaldo, oblivious to Tom's grumbling, kept talking with Margaret, his voice a steady anchor. He asked about her kids, her old neighborhood, the jazz records she loved. Each answer revealed more, her resilience, her losses, her quiet pride. I raised them alone, she said, her eyes distant. No one helped, but we made it. Ronaldo's heart ached, picturing his own mother's late nights, her tired smiles. He took Margaret's hand, his grip gentle but firm. You're stronger than anyone I know, he said, his voice thick. Margaret's tears welled, but she squeezed his hand, her strength surprising him. The crowd around them grew, drawn by Ronaldo's presence. A young mom with a stroller paused, her toddler pointing at Margaret's gum. An office worker, earbuds dangling, stopped mid-stride. Jake saw his chance and ducked into the coffee shop, returning with a tray of free coffees. For everyone, he said, his voice bold despite his nerves. Mia jumped up, passing cups to the small group, her energy infectious. Margaret sipped her coffee, her hands steadier now, her scarf bright against the grey street. For the first time, she felt part of something, not just a shadow on the sidewalk. Ronaldo's mind churned with ideas. Margaret needed more than scarves and coffee. She needed safety, warmth, a future. He'd seen shelters turn lives around, but he knew change scared her. She'd clung to this corner for years, its familiarity a frail comfort. He glanced at Jake and Mia, their faces alive with purpose. What if we did something bigger? He said, his voice low, conspiratorial. Jake's eyes widened. Like what? Mia leaned in, her skateboard forgotten. Ronaldo grinned, his energy sparking. A fundraiser. For Margaret. For others like her. We could get this street together. Food, music, people helping out. Jake nodded slowly, his mind racing. He'd never done anything like this, but Ronaldo's belief made it feel possible. Mia's face lit up. I know people who'd help, she said, thinking of her skater friends, her school's art club. Margaret listened, her eyes wide, her heart pounding. For me? She whispered, her voice trembling. Ronaldo touched her shoulder, his voice steady. For you, Margaret. You deserve it. Her tears spilled over, but she smiled, a real smile, bright as the sun breaking through clouds. Tom, still at his cart, scoffed loud enough for them to hear. Fundraiser? Waste of time, he muttered, flipping a hot dog. This guy's just playing hero. Mia glared, but Ronaldo shook his head, his eyes calm. Let him talk, he said softly. We'll show him. Jake felt a fire ignite, his usual shyness fading. He saw the street differently now, not just a place to work, but a place to change. Mia pulled out her phone, her fingers flying as she texted friends, her excitement palpable. The plan was forming, rough but real, like a seed taking root. Ronaldo stayed with Margaret, sharing more stories. He told her about his mother's cooking, the spicy dishes that warmed his childhood. Margaret laughed, recalling her own recipes, cornbread, collard greens, meals that stretched for days. Their voices wove together, a quiet harmony against the city's noise. Jake and Mia brainstormed nearby, tossing ideas, live music, bake sales, maybe a mural for the street. The crowd lingered, some snapping photos, others just watching, moved by the scene. A young man in a suit dropped a 20 into Margaret's box, his face sheepish. Keep it up, ma'am, he said, hurrying off. Margaret's eyes followed him, her heart full, her scarf soft against her neck. As the morning faded, Margaret's cough worsened, a harsh rattle that made Ronaldo's stomach twist. He noticed her wince, her hands clutching the thermos tightly. "You okay?" he asked, his voice gentle but urgent. She nodded, brushing it off. "Just the cold," she said, but her face paled. Ronaldo's resolve hardened. He couldn't let her stay here, not like this. But he knew trust took time, and Margaret's corner was her anchor. He leaned closer, his voice low. "Margaret, there's a place nearby, warm, safe, with people who'd care for you. Will you think about it?" Her eyes clouded, fear flickering. "This is my spot," she said, her voice small. Ronaldo nodded, not pushing. "Just think about it," he said, his smile steady. The street buzzed with new energy. Jake sketched ideas on a napkin, his hands shaking with excitement. Mia texted furiously, her friends already hyped for the fundraiser. Even Tom's grumbling softened, though he'd never admit it. Ronaldo stood, brushing dirt from his jeans, his eyes scanning the street. He saw potential now, a community waiting to wake up. He turned to Margaret, his voice firm. "Tomorrow, we start planning. You're not alone, okay?" She nodded, her tears drying, her scarf bright against the gray. Ronaldo gave her hand one last squeeze, then walked away, his cap low, his heart racing with purpose. Jake and Mia watched him go, their minds buzzing. Jake felt taller, like he'd stepped into something bigger than himself. Mia clutched her phone, her photo of Ronaldo and Margaret now a spark for change. Margaret sat quietly, her box of gum nearly empty, her thermos warm in her hands. She looked at the street, its faces blurring, and felt something shift. The fundraiser loomed, a dream she couldn't quite grasp. She wanted to believe, but fear clung to her, heavy as the cold pavement. Ronaldo's promise echoed. A lifeline, but she wasn't ready to let go of her corner. Not yet. 3. The city hummed under a pale afternoon sky, its streets alive with the usual clamor of horns and footsteps. Margaret's corner, once a lonely patch of cracked pavement, now buzzed with a different energy. The fundraiser had left its mark, strings of fairy lights draped across lampposts, a faded chalk mural of flowers on the sidewalk, and a lingering sense of possibility. Margaret sat on her familiar blanket, her new green scarf soft against her neck, her box of gum nearly empty. Her cough still rattled, sharp and stubborn, but her eyes held a quiet glow, like embers refusing to fade. The street felt less cold today, as if Ronaldo's warmth had seeped into the concrete. Passers-by nodded at her now, some even stopping to buy gum or share a smile. She clutched her thermos, its tea long gone, and murmured her offer. "Gum? Just $1." Her voice steadier, carrying a trace of pride. Ronaldo approached, his black hoodie and cap a familiar sight. His steps were light, his heart full of plans. Beside him walked Carlos, a teammate with a quick laugh and a knack for rallying people. Ronaldo had told him about Margaret, and Carlos, moved by the story, insisted on coming. They carried a canvas bag, its contents clinking softly, small gifts, a promise of more to come. Ronaldo's mind raced with the shelter idea. He'd visited it yesterday, its warm rooms and kind staff easing his worries. But Margaret's hesitation clung to him, her fear of leaving her corner a knot he needed to untie gently. As he neared, he saw her frail figure, her scarf bright against the grey street, and his resolve deepened. This wasn't just about a warm bed, it was about giving her a life worth living. Margaret looked up, her face softening at the sight of Ronaldo. "You're back," she said, her voice warm, almost playful. Ronaldo grinned, crouching beside her. "Always, Margaret." He introduced Carlos, whose easy smile made her chuckle. "This guy's trouble," Ronaldo teased, nudging Carlos. "But he's got a good heart." Carlos handed Margaret a small bouquet of daisies from the bag, their petals bright against her weathered hands. "For you, ma'am," he said, his voice sincere. Margaret's eyes misted, her fingers trembling as she touched the flowers. "Nobody's given me flowers in years," she whispered, her voice cracking. She tucked them into her scarf, their whiteness glowing like a quiet hope. Jake emerged from his coffee shop, his apron loose, his face lit with nervous excitement. The fundraiser had changed him, his shy slouch gone, replaced by a quiet confidence. Mia skated up, her board clattering, her backpack stuffed with flyers for their next project. The fundraiser had raised enough for Margaret's immediate needs: medicine, warm clothes, a few weeks' rent for a cheap room. But they all knew it wasn't enough. Tom, the hot dog vendor, watched from his cart, his usual scowl softer now. He'd grudgingly donated hot dogs to the fundraiser, and though he'd never admit it, Ronaldo's persistence had cracked his cynicism. The street felt alive, a fragile community stitched together by one man's compassion. Ronaldo sat on the blanket, his knees brushing the pavement. He asked Margaret about her day, her voice growing stronger as she spoke. She'd bought a new pair of gloves with the fundraiser money, she said, showing him the cheap wool mittens, but her cough cut through her words, harsh and deep, making Ronaldo's stomach twist. He glanced at Carlos, who nodded subtly, reading his mind. Ronaldo took a breath, his voice gentle. "Margaret, I saw a place yesterday, a shelter, not far. Warm beds, hot meals, folks who'd look out for you." Margaret's eyes clouded, her hands tightening on her gum box. "This corner's my home," she said, her voice small. Ronaldo nodded, his smile steady. "I know. But what if you could have more, a place to knit, to rest, to be safe?" Her gaze flickered, fear wrestling with hope. Jake and Mia joined them, sitting cross-legged on the sidewalk. Jake shared his idea, a knitting workshop at the shelter where Margaret could teach kids. "You'd be amazing," he said, his voice earnest. Mia nodded, her eyes bright. "My art club could make posters, get people to come." Margaret's lips parted, her heart racing. "Teach knitting?" she whispered, her voice trembling. She'd dreamed of it once, years ago, when her hands were steadier, her life fuller. Ronaldo leaned closer, his voice warm. "You've got so much to share, Margaret. Those kids would love you." Her tears welled, but she smiled, a spark igniting in her chest. Tom shuffled over, his hands in his pockets, his face gruff but softer. "Heard about your shelter idea," he muttered, eyeing Ronaldo. "You really sticking around for this?" Ronaldo met his gaze, his voice calm. "I'm here for Margaret, Tom, for as long as she needs." Tom's jaw twitched, his skepticism faltering. He'd seen the fundraiser's impact, the street cleaner, the kids who'd painted the mural, the neighbors who'd donated. He cleared his throat, his voice low. "I got some blankets at home. Could drop 'em off at that shelter." Mia's eyes widened, a grin spreading. Jake nudged her, both stunned by Tom's shift. Ronaldo smiled, his hand on Tom's shoulder. "That'd mean a lot, man." The group talked, their voices weaving a plan. Ronaldo pulled out his phone, calling the shelter's director, a kind woman named Clara. She agreed to meet Margaret, promising a private room and medical care. Ronaldo shared the details, his voice steady, painting a picture of safety and warmth. Margaret listened, her hands clutching the daisies, her heart torn. She'd fought so long to survive here, this corner her only constant. But Ronaldo's eyes, earnest and unwavering, held her steady. "Will you visit it with me?" he asked, his voice soft. Margaret hesitated, then nodded, her voice barely audible. "Okay." The next morning, Ronaldo and Carlos arrived early, their breath fogging in the cool air. Margaret waited, her blanket folded, her gumbox tucked under her arm. Jake and Mia tagged along, their excitement palpable. Tom stood by his cart, watching, a rare nod of approval as they passed. The shelter was a short walk, its brick building modest but welcoming. Clara greeted them, her smile warm, her grey hair pulled into a bun. She led Margaret inside, showing her a small room with a bed, a window, a shelf for her things. Margaret's steps slowed, her eyes wide, as if stepping into a dream. "This, for me?" she asked, her voice trembling. Clara nodded, her hand gentle on Margaret's arm. "Your home, if you want it." Margaret sat on the bed, her hands tracing the quilt, its patches soft under her fingers. Ronaldo crouched beside her, his voice low. "You don't have to decide now. Just try it." Margaret's tears spilled, her cough rattling, but she nodded, her heart cracking open. She saw her old life, cold nights, empty days, slipping away, and for the first time, She wasn't afraid. Jake and Mia lingered by the door, their faces bright. Carlos pulled Ronaldo aside, his voice quiet. "You're changing her life, man." Ronaldo shook his head, his eyes on Margaret. "She's changing mine." Days passed and Margaret settled into the shelter. Ronaldo visited often, bringing small gifts, a skein of yarn, a jazz CD, a photo of their fundraiser mural. Carlos came too, his laughter filling the shelter's common room. Jake and Mia organized the knitting workshop, turning a corner of the shelter into a cozy space with yarn and needles. Margaret taught kids from the neighborhood, her hands shaky but sure, her voice steady as she showed them stitches. The kids adored her, calling her Miss Margaret, their giggles warming her like sunlight. Mia designed a logo for the workshop, a scarf with daisies, while Jake brewed coffee for the parents who stopped by. One afternoon, Margaret shared her dream, to knit a scarf for Ronaldo, a thank you for seeing her when no one else did. Ronaldo, touched, gave her a bright red yarn, his favorite color. "Make it bold like you," he said, his grin wide. Margaret laughed, a sound that echoed through the shelter, her cough quieter now with proper care. Tom visited, dropping off blankets and a gruff apology. "Didn't think you'd stick around," he told Ronaldo, his voice thick. Ronaldo clapped his shoulder, his voice warm. "Family doesn't walk away." Tom nodded, his eyes misty, and joined the workshop, awkwardly learning to knit, his big hands fumbling but trying. The workshop grew, drawing more kids, more neighbors. Margaret's scarves piled up, each one a story of resilience. Ronaldo funded a small fund for supplies, ensuring the workshop would last. He brought his teammates, their presence drawing crowds, their laughter mingling with the kids. The shelter became a hub, its doors open, its rooms full of life. Margaret's room held her treasures, the daisies, now pressed, her gum box, a photo of her and Ronaldo at the fundraiser. She wasn't invisible anymore. She was Miss Margaret, the heart of a community. One evening, Margaret finished Ronaldo's scarf, its red yarn bold and soft. She handed it to him, her eyes bright, her voice steady. "For you, because you saw me." Ronaldo wrapped it around his neck, his throat tight. "It's perfect," he said, pulling her into a hug. The shelter's common room buzzed, kids clapping, Jake and Mia grinning, Carlos snapping a photo. Tom, knitting nearby, gave a rare smile. Ronaldo looked at Margaret, her face glowing, and felt a quiet pride. She'd found her place, her purpose, her family. The city noticed. Stories of Margaret's workshop spread, inspiring other shelters to start programs. Ronaldo's name carried the tale, but he always pointed to Margaret. "She's the hero," he told reporters, his scarf bright against his hoodie. Jake enrolled in community college, studying social work, his coffee shop shifts fueling his dreams. Mia's art club painted murals across the city, each one a nod to Margaret's resilience. Tom became a regular at the shelter, his cart parked nearby, his hot dogs free for the kids. The street corner, once Margaret's lonely fight, was now a symbol, a place where one man's kindness had sparked a movement. Margaret sat in her room one night, her knitting needles clicking, a jazz record playing softly. She looked at her shelf, the daisies, the photo, the gum box, and smiled. Her cough was faint now, her heart full. She wasn't alone anymore. Ronaldo's visits, the kids' laughter, the community's warmth, they were her home. She thought of her old corner, its cold pavement a distant memory, and felt no weight. She was Miss Margaret, her story woven into scarves, her life a testament to the power of being seen. Ronaldo, somewhere across the city, touched his red scarf, its warmth a reminder of her strength, and knew he'd never stop fighting for those like her. The city kept turning, but its heart beat stronger, changed forever by a woman on a blanket and a man who stopped to listen. The story of Ronaldo's encounter with Margaret, a woman selling gum on a forgotten city corner, is a powerful reminder of the impact one person's compassion can have. As I reflect on this narrative, I'm struck by its emotional depth and the universal truths it reveals about humanity, connection, and the choices we make every day. Ronaldo, a global soccer icon, could have walked past Margaret like countless others did, lost in his own world of fame and success. Instead, he stopped, saw her, and chose to act. This simple decision, to pause, listen, and care, unraveled a chain of events that transformed not just Margaret's life, but an entire community. The story resonates deeply, stirring feelings of hope, empathy, and a quiet call to action that lingers long after the tale ends. The first emotion that hits me is awe at Ronaldo's humility. Despite his wealth and status, he crouched on a gritty sidewalk, leveling himself with Margaret, a woman society had deemed invisible. His actions weren't performative. They were raw, genuine, rooted in a recognition of shared humanity. This humility moved me because it challenges the notion that greatness is tied to power or prestige. Ronaldo's choice to sit, listen, and share stories showed that true greatness lies in small, intentional acts of kindness. I felt a pang of admiration for his ability to shed the weight of his fame and connect with Margaret as an equal, reminding me that no matter where life takes us, staying grounded in empathy is what defines us. Margaret's resilience also stirred profound respect. Her weathered hands, trembling as she offered gum, told a story of a life marked by struggle, widowhood, raising kids alone, and facing the world's indifference. Yet, she never lost her quiet dignity. Her soft voice, offering gum despite being ignored, was a testament to her unyielding spirit. I felt a mix of sadness and inspiration thinking about her years of solitude, her courage to keep going when hope seemed thin. Her story hit close to home, reminding me of people in my own life, grandparents, neighbors, strangers, who carry burdens we might never see. Margaret's strength taught me that resilience isn't loud or flashy. It's the steady act of showing up day after day, even when the world looks away. The community's transformation, sparked by Ronaldo's actions, filled me with hope. Jake, the barista, stepped out of his routine to join the cause, finding purpose beyond his coffee counter. Mia, the skeptical teen, traded her cynicism for action, rallying her friends to help. Even Tom, the gruff vendor, softened, offering blankets and a rare apology. This ripple effect showed how one person's kindness can ignite a collective shift, turning strangers into allies. I felt uplifted by the idea that a single act, buying gum, sharing coffee, could awaken a street's conscience. It made me reflect on my own community, the people I pass daily, and how a small gesture might bridge the gaps between us. But the story also stirred discomfort, forcing me to confront my own blind spots. How many Margarets have I walked past, too caught up in my schedule to notice? The image of her sitting alone, ignored by the crowd, hit like a quiet rebuke. I felt a twinge of guilt, not because I've been unkind, but because I've been distracted, assuming someone else would step up. Ronaldo's choice to stop challenged me to question my excuses, being too busy, too tired, too focused on my own problems. His actions showed that compassion doesn't require grand gestures. It starts with seeing, really seeing, the people around us. This realization was humbling, a nudge to slow down and look beyond the surface of my daily rush. The emotional core of the story lies in the bond between Ronaldo and Margaret. Their connection, built on shared stories and quiet moments, felt sacred. When Ronaldo held her hand, wiped her tears, or promised to return, I felt a lump in my throat. Their exchange wasn't about money or fame. It was about restoring Margaret's dignity, reminding her she was worth seeing. This moved me deeply because it highlighted the power of presence, being there, fully, for another person. I thought of moments in my own life when someone's attention, a kind word, or a listening ear lifted me. Margaret's tears, her smile when Ronaldo called her strong, reminded me how much we crave to be valued, not for what we have, but for who we are. The lessons from this story are practical, rooted in choices we can all make. First, it taught me to notice the invisible. Margaret was one of countless people society overlooks, the elderly, the homeless, the struggling. I've learned to pause, make eye contact, and acknowledge those I might otherwise pass. A smile, a greeting, or a small purchase can affirm someone's existence. I've started carrying a few dollars to buy from street vendors, not out of pity, but respect for their hustle. This shift feels small but real, a way to honor the Margarets in my city. Second, the story showed the power of persistence. Ronaldo didn't stop at one visit. He returned, built trust, and followed through. This challenged me to move beyond one-off acts of kindness. I've committed to checking in on a neighbor who lives alone, not just once, but regularly, bringing coffee or just chatting. Consistency, I've learned, turns fleeting kindness into lasting impact. It's not always easy, life gets busy, but Ronaldo's dedication reminds me that real change takes time and heart. Third, I learned the value of community. Ronaldo didn't act alone. He inspired Jake, Mia, Carlos, and even Tom to join him. This taught me to lean on others, to share ideas, and to build something bigger than myself. I've started volunteering at a local shelter, not as a solo effort, but with friends, turning it into a group outing. We bring food, play games with the kids, and listen to the residents' stories. It's messy, imperfect, but it feels like the street corner coming alive, a reminder that together, we can do more. Finally, the story underscored the importance of dignity. Ronaldo didn't just give Margaret money, he gave her respect, listening to her dreams, valuing her skills. This hit me hard, making me rethink how I help others. I've stopped assuming what people need and started asking, whether it's a coworker struggling or a stranger on the street. I've learned to offer help in ways that empower, like buying a meal and eating together, or asking someone what they're proud of. Dignity, I've realized, is the gift that keeps giving long after the moment passes. Applying these lessons isn't always smooth. Some days, I'm too rushed to stop for a stranger. Other times, I doubt if my small actions matter. But Ronaldo's story reminds me that impact starts with intent. I keep a note on my phone. See someone today. It's a prompt to look up, to notice, to act, even if it's just a kind word. Over time, these moments add up, weaving a thread of connection through my life and others. I felt the change, less isolation, more purpose, a sense that I'm part of something bigger. The story's emotional weight lies in its simplicity. It's not about saving the world, it's about saving one person's day, then another, until the world shifts. Ronaldo and Margaret showed me that compassion is a choice, a muscle we build with practice. Their bond, forged on a cold sidewalk, feels like a blueprint for living, a call to be present, to persist, to pull others in. I'm left with a quiet resolve to carry their story forward, to make my corner of the world a little warmer, a little kinder. As this story touched my heart, I hope it moves yours too. Let's keep the ripple going. Hit that like button to spread the message, share this video with someone who needs a lift, and subscribe for more stories that inspire. Drop a comment below. What would you do in Ronaldo's shoes? How can we make a difference right now? Your voice matters, so let's start the conversation and keep Margaret's spirit alive.